Hey, thanks for joining me. This is Sizzlewump here with a little Java demo. We're going to do I'm going to show you how I did my map maker program, applet, application, whatever you want to call it. So just put in some little comments here. We've got our import statements. These are going to bring in our Java API libraries, which we need in order to have Java recognize our keywords and things like extends maybe, or maybe just like our objects like buttons and JFrames. So what we're going to do is this first method here, it's actually a class. This is where we're going to define our constructor in between these brackets. So we're going to start by declaring a few variables. I'm going to walk you through that. It's not too complicated. This is maybe the fun part. So we're just going to take that and drop that, and we're going to call this columns. So we're making two variables, rows and columns. This is going to be the overall dimensions of our button array once we get that set up in here. So there's a couple things we're going to need to go along with that. I'm just going to try and drop everything in here and explain as we go. So if I go too fast, just back up the video. This is going to be a JPanel. Whoops. JPanel. Okay, so we're going to have a couple of JPanels. This outer pane is so we're going to have an outer pane, a grid pane, and an options pane. Now the outer pane, it's like the massive applet dimensions of the pane, the main pane of the, if you will. Within that outer pane, we're going to attach the grid pane and the options pane. So those are going to be like sub panes or panels. So outer panel, we're just going to say new JPanel. And then let's just take all that. So what did we say? Grid pane. Okay. So these all get created the same way. We're just changing the variable name. So far we've got two panels. Let's put a third one, and let's call it OptionsPane. Okay. Next we're going to put in some more objects into our little program here. Let's have a JCombo box. Oops, sorry about that. Combo box. And if you notice, the good standard practice for coding is in Java is first uppercase the first letter of each word in your variable names. That's just easy for readability. So that's JCombo box. Let's call it something related to a box. How about actually in this example, we're going to just call this capital options. And the reason why is because in this game Civilization for Xbox, you can they've got these different capitals for different nations, so that's what we're gonna try and replicate here. Alright, so now we're gonna do some JButtons. Actually, this one it's going to be a we're going to make it an array of buttons, and you can just initialize it right here in our constructor, and we're going to call this tiles. So to make an array in Java, you're just going to do just square brackets like that, and that's a one-dimensional array. Now it's a two-dimensional array. So it's a series of buttons in an XY arrangement, and that's what that does. Okay, next we're going to do a couple more J buttons. Let's do, whoops, let's not do that. Let's do that. This one's going to be for one of our images that we're going to bring in here, and I'll show you that here in a little bit, but it's called Mountain. Okay, we're going to say new J button. And when you initialize it here, you have to give it the exact spelling of the file name that you want the program to grab that image from. So that's what we've got the quotations for. That's the file name, and it's going to assign. We're going to do some J labels, which tie into that as well. So I'll show you that here in a little bit. Next we're going to do another button. We're going to call this erase. And let's just do this. Let's keep it simple, right? And we're going to call it erase. Yeah, always put your semicolon at the end of a statement in Java. It's just, life is easier that way. And good practice is probably, have some good formatting here. So let's indent all these. I should have done that. Shame on me. Sorry for making you watch this. We'll get there. Okay, so next we've got, we're going to do a J label here. So let's do private label. Okay, this is really key, really important here. We're going to call this the preview label, and I don't need all that. So what that's going to be, it's going to be a little, it's going to show the image of the button that you select as you select it. So it'd be like a little preview, like a tab preview, or a thumbnail image, I'm sorry. So then we're going to do a new label, and this one's going to be called button label. Okay, new label. Okay, so we're making this J label slightly different from the last one. What we did in the last one up here with the preview label is we just made a J label and we didn't give it a default starting value. However, for this button label, we do want to do that, and we're going to give it a default value of nothing for the label. So it's important later, and the reason why is because we're going to call on this label and change it throughout our program. we won't need to really do that with the other one so much. So that's why. And now we're going to do a couple of special objects here. This one's called a ReportClick handler, and we're going to call it handler is the variable name. And it's going to be, we're going to do the same thing, new ReportClick. Okay, and then we're going to do another special. This is our last variable here for now, in the constructor at least. We're going to call this default list cell renderer. And we're going to, this is my special code name for this, so we're just going to call it doctor. Because that's quite a mouthful and we don't want to be typing that throughout our code. If you ever need to find out where I'm getting these method names from, that's all in the Java API. They've got a huge resource online available for people who are interested in learning all the special keywords in Java. Alright, so we're going to do, that's our constructor, it's done for now. We're going to do a couple methods inside of this. So this is going to be the public, what do we call our file? Civ map test. Okay, we're actually going to string title. We're going to make an instance of our Civ map test object. That's what we're doing right here. Okay, so we're going to give it, I'm going to say super, whoops, lowercase super title. So this will draw that title as a string, and it does that. It's saying this is a child object of the parent is what this does. So it's like, okay, look to the parent, the super, and grab that title and put it here as the parameter for this object. Feel free to correct me down below in the comments, but just gonna explain it as much as I know. So we've got set new minimum size. Okay, what are we setting the minimum size of? We're setting the minimum size of this Civ map test, which is an object of this Civ map test, which is an object of this JFrame. So all this kind of has a hierarchy. So the JFrame is like the grandparent. Civ map test here as the class is the parent, and then the Civ map test as just as an object is a child. So that's our hierarchy: 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we're setting the minimum size of the JFrame. Okay, and we're going to say new dimension 1000 by 800. This is just the size of the panel that's going to be displayed to the user when they fire up this applet. Okay, you can set it to whatever you like. Those are the dimensions I chose to fit my screen at home. Okay, we're going to do a string array, and it's going to be a series of capitals. By the way, I've already tested this code, so provided that I don't make any typos, this will all compile correctly, and I'll have something nice to show you at the end of this. So capitals, we're going to do some curly braces, and everything within these curly braces will be part of our array. So let's give it some stuff. These are strings, so with strings you have double quotes. We're going to say select a capital. Okay, that's our first array, first element of our array. Next, we're going to do capital America. Okay, and these are actual file names, except for the first element. There'll be file names afterwards, and I'll explain why here in a little bit. But let's just we're not going to do every single capital in the game. I'm just, for our demonstration purposes, going to do the ones which start with A, in the interest of time. So there's actually like 16 or 17, so if you do the full list, which we're not going to do, so that would be a little involved if we did. So Aztec, and that's all we're going to do for this array. And we need a semicolon here. Okay, so next, why do we need that? Alright, we're going to go final icon. We're going to make a new array called icon. Sorry, we're going to make a new array of icons, which is called capital icons. New icon array of size 4. So it's actually, if you recall, Java arrays they start with 0 and they end with whatever you specify here. So this is actually going to be 5 elements. So we got, we've got, let's make that a 3. Let's do it that way. Okay. You caught me. Alright, so we're going to do this. Okay, we're going to make a for loop. Okay. I'm going to say for int I. And you may have seen this a few times before. So your for loop, you got 3 parameters. You're going to do the start point, which is integer, and we make a variable I, and we're going to say start at 1. Now, why aren't we starting with 0 since an array starts with 0? That's a good question. The reason why is because, remember when we made this and I said we're not going to look at a file name for that first element? That's why we're skipping over it. So we're going to say for each of these ones which are file names, and our second parameter in the for loop, I less than capital icons dot length. Okay, so we're calling this dot length method. That's a shortcut method for an icon object, which will give us this variable. It'll find the size, the max size. So as long as we're at 1 and less than the maximum size, which is why we want the 4 there. I forgot about that. Okay, and then finally the last parameter, I++. We're just saying that we want to increment this for loop for the I variable each time we pass through it. Okay, so once you're within the for loop, okay, we're going to do some braces. So here's where the magic happens. We're going to say capital icons. When you're looking at element I in this array, we're going to say new image icon, get class dot get resource capitals of element I in this array. Okay, that's quite a lot of stuff I just covered there in this one little statement in the for loop. So we took we're calling on the capital icons, which is an object of icon. So it's a child of icon, right? And we're saying element I, so it's going to be either 1, 2, or 3, but not 4 and not 0. So for each of those, you're going to say new image icon object, and it's going to say get the class, get the resource of that element in the array. So how does it know how to do that? These are all just methods in the Java API, which are going to bring in our images, which I've already drawn up, and I'll show you. They're in MS Paint here in a little bit. Okay, so our for loop is done, and our icon method for the array of capital icons is complete. Next, we're going to say tiles. We're going to create our tiles object, which is a new JButton array of rows and columns, which we've already created these variables up above in the constructor. So this is going to bring in that information. So this is where we're going to find out this 27 by 32 buttons in this thing called tiles. And don't forget your semicolon. Don't ever forget that. Okay, next we're going to call doctor set horizontal alignment. This is kind of tricky, but it's necessary if you want your JCombo box to have the text centered and looking top notch in your actual applet. You'll see that later. If you don't put this, it's going to default to left alignment, and it goes right up to the edge of the JCombo box, and I just think it looks kind of tacky. So I did a lot of research to find out how to do this, and it looks really professional. So I'm going to keep that in my code here. Next we're going to start adding objects to our existing objects. So we're going to do capital options equals new JCombo box capitals. Okay. Actually, what I did is I just initialized this this variable here outside of our constructor. So that's just how we did it for this. I think there's several different ways you can do this, but I'm a little disorganized, so I do apologize. So next we're going to do another one of those JOptions we're going to actually call this method setRenderer. This is more on that that doctor thing, that big long thing of text I showed you earlier. So that's where you tell it, hey, take a look at your capital options and format it the way that we'd like to see it centered with the text in the JCombo box. So next, preview label, it's going to be new JLabel. I'm going to say element 0. In fact, element 0 is this right here, which doesn't point to any file. Let's just give it element 1 so that it's got a picture to default to. I think that's probably a better idea. Okay, next we're going to do, this is called our, we're going to get into item listeners. So capital options, add item. And what's an item listener? I'm so glad you asked. These are special objects in Java, because everything in Java is an object, which listen for the user to click different parts within an applet. If you click a button, if you click a JCombo box, if you expand a panel, all those things can be listened for, and you can tell the code what to do in certain circumstances. So what did I do? New item listener. Yep. Curly braces. So this is going to be public. Thank you so much if you made it this far listening to my little Java tutorial here, and hope that if you didn't already know some of these things, at least you were able to get through it and see how do people really use Java in real life. That was always a difficult point for me to focus on in school, but I went the distance and got some working code out of it, so I'm pretty amazed with myself. Sorry, but okay, so we're doing item state changed. This is a method within our item listener, and this is the variable which is an instance of an item event. Okay, so that's the parameter we're passing, and what do we want it to do? We're going to give it an if statement. So if event, actually, you know what, most people, I'll just show you this better practice. Most people just say event E, so we'll call it E. If E dot get state changed, state change, if it is equal to, now careful because these double equals, they'll trip you up. So if it's exactly equal to is what that means, I believe. Event dot selected. Okay, when you use regular equals in Java, Java's expecting to compare two things, like two numbers or two excuse me, two instances of objects. When you use equals equals, it's like telling Java, hey, is this object an actual version of this other object? So it's a comparator. So that's what we're doing. We're going to say preview label dot set icon capital icons. Okay, we're going to do square braces for these because we're calling an element of that capital icons array. So which one? We're going to say capital options dot get selected index. So the element which we're choosing is the one which the user clicked on. Okay. So that's it. That's our whole if statement right there. Okay. We're getting close. We're getting close. Stay with me here. Okay, so that's item state changed. I just gotta line up my brackets so I know where I'm at. Okay, new listener. Okay. This is where we're going to put our next piece of code. Okay. This is... wait a second, I almost forgot something very important. We're going to do that. We had never closed this right here. Ooh. That's okay, that's a better practice. Okay. I always forget about that. With curly braces I'm okay, but with these regular parentheses, if I don't put it on a new line, I'll forget about it for some reason. Don't ask why. Alright, so we're going to go Mountain, add ActionListener, new ActionListener. So we're going to have the code tell it what we're going to do if someone clicks on the mountain. And I'm about to do that whole thing I just said again. If I don't put this somewhere, I don't know. I just have to learn how to do that. Alright, so within the mountain action listener, public void action performed action event E, and here's where the magic happens again. We got a preview label set icon new image icon get class, similar to what we did before with our what was it called, our capital icons. So get resource mountain. Now PNGs, that's portable network graphics. Those are images which are very lightweight. You can use other ones like JPEGs or GIFs or whatever you want here, but these ones are tried and true, so to speak, so I like to stick with those. Okay, so that's it for this piece here. We've got okay, we're closing our brackets again, and there, and gonna do this. Okay, what this is going to close this parentheses right here. Okay, so some people like to put comments. You can put comments there, the double forward slash, and type some text. Maybe you're like, oh, we're closing our action listener. Okay, for people like me who forget to do that. Alright, now we're going to do same thing for erase. We're going to add action listener. This will be our last action listener that we're going to make. New action listener. Okay. We've got curly braces. I'm going to say public void. If you're asking me right now, why didn't I just copy paste from above? I'm getting there. I'm not quite the best programmer yet, but I'm getting there. And also, I haven't made too many demos like this before, so it's a learning experience for me as well. Set icon, null. Okay, we're gonna set it to null. So, when you click on the erase button, what happens is we set the preview label, which you'll see once I get a running version of this. We're going to set the preview label to null, and then when you click on a button, it's going to take whatever the previewed image is, and it's going to paste that right over top of the button. So in this case for erase, it's going to take the null and it's going to paste an empty button over top of whichever button you just clicked on, which may or may not have already been painted on by you, the user. So it may not make a lot of sense right now, but when you see what this does, seeing is believing, and it's going to be good like gravy. Alright, here's where we're going to start adding our objects to the panels. Okay, so we're going to set OptionsPane, set layout, new grid layout, and we're going to say it's going to be a 4x1 series of buttons on the options pane. Now if you remember, I've got 3 panes. The options pane is the third pane, which is going to be our toolbar that goes on the right side of within the main pane, which is what did we say? Grid? Nope, outer pane. Okay. Alright, so let's stick with options pane, and let's actually do some copy pasting here, because we're going to do a couple of these. Okay, we're going to add the preview label. We're going to add capital options. Oops. We're going to copy paste some things here. Okay, instead of that, now we're going to add the mountain. We're going to add erase, which these are going to be buttons. Okay, and actually those are the only ones for OptionsPane. And we're going to call this method, which we haven't yet made, but it's very quick and easy. It's called build buttons. So I'll show you that down below here once I get there. A few more lines down. Okay, we're going to do grid pane. How do I do that? Dot set layout. New grid layout. Rows. Columns. So those are the dimensions of our grid pane. That's going to be the overall panel, which I keep talking about. So I'm sorry. It's going to be the second panel, which goes under the outer pane panel. So it's our second one. It's the array of buttons. Okay, so grid pane, and finally here's the outer pane. We're going to add that one last because you always add the smaller components before you can you add the smaller components to themselves, and then you add those smaller ones to the main one finally. Otherwise, if you create them in the wrong order, things won't work well and you won't be seeing your buttons as you expect to, because things will appear in existence before their parents, so to speak, if you can imagine. Okay, so outer pane, add grid pane. Say border layout. Dot center. Okay, let's copy that. We're gonna say OptionsPane. And we're going to say east. Okay, then we do that again. No. Actually, this time we're going to say this. Set default. Close operation. We're going to tell it, hey, by the way, when we're done with this applet, make sure when I hit the X button, it actually closes the applet for me. Java's not quite that good where it will automatically do that for you, so it has to be coded somewhere. So that's where we're going to do that. Okay, we're getting very close. We've got 3 more methods and we'll be done. So here's where we're going to do our build buttons method. Void build buttons. Okay, so this is how we're going to build our buttons array onto the panels. We're going to do a for loop. For int I equals 0, I is less than rows, I plus plus. Okay. We're going to make a nested for loop for int j equals 0, j less than columns, j plus plus. Are you seeing the pattern here? So let's do curly braces. Okay, in this inner for loop, we're going to add all these buttons to the array. So we're going to call tiles, two-dimensional array. We're going to give it I, we're going to give it J, and we're going to say equals new button, new J button. Okay. Okay, we're gonna do a couple more things in here. Whoops. Okay, so instead of a new J button, we're gonna say dot add action listener, and we're gonna give it handler as a parameter. Okay, down here we are going to say dot set size 400 by 400. That's how many buttons. Okay, we're going to not have two dots but one. Okay, then we're going to say add button label. Okay, and finally, one more thing and we're done with this method. We're going to say grid pane dot add tiles I J. Whew. Okay, so our inner for loop is closed out. Our outer for loop is closed out, and our build buttons method is closed out. Okay, so we're going to make, as promised, a couple more things here. I'm going to actually make a subclass here. ReportClick implements ActionListener. Okay. So what does ReportClick do? Let's tell it what to do. Let's have a public void action performed, action event E, curly braces. Okay, we're going to say J button, BTN is the variable name. It's going to be J button event, E dot get source. Okay, and we're going to say BTN set icon. It's going to be preview label dot get icon. Okay, so whichever button you clicked on from our toolbar, it's going to be the image you see in the preview label, which in turn is going to be the image which gets set to whichever J button BTN that gets clicked on and reported by our ReportClick action listener. That's a lot to remember, but again, I'll show you what it looks like once we get there. It's all quite necessary. So finally, you have to have a public static void main we're going to have a main method here. And this is very common practice for Java programs and applications. If you do a lot of Java work, you're going to know this method by name from here to here. What goes in it, that's up to you. So when we run this, this is kind of like our engine method. It's going to tell our program how to start. So let's go all the way back up. Let's grab our file, our class name. I'm going to call it here, and we're going to call it CMT. Oops, let's do lowercase. CMT equals new civ map. I still have it on my clipboard. Okay, and we're going to give it a title. Here's where, remember earlier we did our superclass reference. This is the super message that it's going to draw from. So we're going to just have our applet have a title of design and map below. Okay, and then we're going to do cmt.pack. That's a method which is gonna, it works with jpanels, so it tells it how to put itself back away when it's done. And then we're gonna do cmt last line, say it with me, set visible to true, so that we can see our applet. Alright, we are done. I'm gonna build it. Just, well, I guess I'll save it too. Let's save it. Yep. Let's do, ooh, no. I forgot. I want to save it where my resources are. Always do that. Save your file in a folder where your images belong. Okay, we're going to build it. Hopefully there's no errors. Okay. It was too good to be true. Okay, so what I did is found a couple of problems with my code, came back and got it to work, so I'm just going to cover it with you here. In these lines right here where we're adding our elements to the jpanels, be very careful and make sure you've got all the ones which I've typed out here. I guess I was missing this capital options one. That's no good. And I was missing, I think, these two, or maybe these two. But nevertheless, you do need those in order for all of this to work. Excuse me. Other than that, there was an error here. You need to have an X on JavaX on this import statement. I missed that. And also right here where I called this doctor, I had another reference dot. You don't need that. That'll cause problems. And finally, at the end of this ActionListener for Mountain, I completely missed this end parentheses and semicolon. So patched that in. Everything's looking good. Like I said, I got the program to work. Let me show you what you've all been waiting for. We're going to build. We've got no errors. Okay, and now we can run it. And here's what we did. Okay, this is the jpanel. The outer pane is this entire thing. Here, right here is the title. The super thing that we typed, the string where it says design a map. Over here on the top right, this image you're seeing with the star, that's what we called our preview label. So it's previewing whatever button is selected. If I select this erase button, it goes to null like we programmed it to do. So the image got cleared out. If I click this mountain button, I've got this pretty sweet image of a mountain. I made that in MS Paint. I'll show you how to do that in a moment. Also, we've got our JCombo box. So this is an array of capital objects. So we got select capital is element 0, capital America element 1, element 2, element 3, and so there's 4 elements. And our code stops looking after the 4th one, which is good practice. So anyway, so let me show you how this works. If you select any of these things on this panel and click one of these empty buttons, lo and behold, you've got a new image. You can even overwrite an existing one, and you can play around with it. This is used to make a map so that you can kind of realize what's behind the fog in the map of the civilization game. The erase button is working, and that's it. That's what the code does. So let me show you real quick. MS Paint, I'll show you a couple of these things here. Okay, so I've got one in my other file that's called grass, and that's what it is. It's grass. So I took the brushes. You can go with like this secondary brush, and I picked like this first one, and you just go with the colors you want to use. Just do these little swipes through here. Okay, pick some other colors, shade it however you like. Probably not this sloppy, but if you take a minute with it, you'll get something pretty cool that looks decent when it's zoomed out. Okay, so now that you've seen that, I'll show you my completed one. This code's a little bit different. It's got quite a few more options, and it looks much prettier. So here it is. Okay, this is based on that code which I just showed you, but with more images. So we got mountains, we got grass, we got water. I made pretty water. I've got ice for the top shelf of ice. Okay. We've got ice for the bottom called ice south. Okay, we got ice fill. It's just kind of like, it's a little hard to see, but it's just some whites and blues to fill in the ice. I made a custom button just to kind of demonstrate something. You can put whatever you want on that button and erase it. We don't use that. We've got landmarks like Angkor Wat. Oh, sorry, Ark of the Covenant. That's what I use for my barbarian villages. We've got discovery, which is like where you find money, just for discovering a river or a plains. You also have what I call Discovery Sea, which is in the water where you're passing through and you find the same kind of thing. So it's just kind of nice format. It goes with the flow there. Our capitals are a little not very detailed. Sorry about the art there, but they're color specific to each capital, and they do kind of coincide with the colors from the game. And then we've got Friendly Village. I just made it kind of a little teepee. So feel free to leave some comments, some feedback below. Hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.